Well, Chris Trump, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Poldy.
No problem. I'm really excited to just meet up with you here today and pick your brain a bit about natural farming solutions. And shout out to a fellow podcast listener, Antonin, for making the connection. After he mentioned it, I totally forgot this. I've interviewed Stephen Cornett on here a few times, and I know you've done
Okay,
a good amount with him. And in preparation, I watched your interview with him last night, so that was a great
cool.
one. Yeah, he's a great
Yeah,
guy.
he's a
I'm
good
hope.
guy. He came to my class and then he came again and helped me put on the class. So he got pretty into natural farming.
Yeah, it seems to be working for him. So hopefully, this will reach the masses.
Yeah, help people jump into it. Absolutely.
Now, I really want to hear your background story and how you got into Korean natural farming. Just, I think it's super interesting and a really inspiring story. But I think it makes sense if we maybe start with what it even is, what Korean natural farming is. I think that'll
Yeah.
give the listeners a bit more, context, and then they'll be able to appreciate your story and some other questions I have for you more. So, Chris, what is Korean natural farming and what are the core principles? Can you enlighten us on that a bit?
Yeah. Some of the core principles are, I think, maybe on first hearing, sometimes especially for a commercial farmer, they seem a little disconnected because it's like, oh, is that real? Um, I guess I'm just caveating because I feel like farmers are so often inundated with the next thing that works, or the product they're gonna buy from this salesman or that, and it becomes farmers become kind of jaded or skeptical. And so I want to say these principles, but also, as we're skipping my backstory, which I think is fine. There's other places you can hear about it. Um,
Well, I still want to get into it
we can get
afterwards.
into it. We can
Yeah.
get into it. But I guess because we're starting with this, I think it's important to just say, even though these are philosophical points that may feel disconnected from for-profit farming. As I've gone through this journey, I've found that these philosophies end up actually bringing us back to the most important things in farming and can foster a lot of success. So um, the my teacher for natural farming was a man named Cho Han Kyu, who I lovingly and respectfully refer to as Master Cho. Um, Good teacher. And but really, as you learn from Master Cho, it is philosophy centric. So in my journey, the practical I learned from some of his students, I learned from his daughter, and from trial. While at the same time listening to him, I'm learning these philosophical points that some took me a year to chew on. Um, so I won't go into those year to chew on ones necessarily first thing, but what you need is what's around you is one of the kind of core natural farming principles, that your fertility, your production, and kind of the things you need to foster those are provided by nature in your environment. And that's, you know, something that is somewhat counterintuitive, because we think we need all of these things. And so, really kind of coming to grips with or coming to agree that what I need is what's around me, and I just go and look for it. That has become how I do projects internationally. That's how I prepare a farm for success. We identify the resources that are available in their area and get them set up with using those resources, and it ends up being drastically cheaper when you're looking for resources that aren't necessarily ready-made products. You're looking for the raw materials,
Right.
and That's a wonderful part of natural farming. Use what you have. In Hawaii, they added a pigeon turn of phrase to it. Use what get, use what you have. And that's it's wildly different than conventional ag, where we buy everything in that we need. Um,
Which is so strange, right? Like it seems like
it's
that's
it's
not
it,
what most of farming was forever.
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't 3 generations ago, but it is what we're used to now. It's the standard operating procedure, and extension agents come and tell you what products to buy, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, use what get, or what you need is what's around you, is an incredible and important philosophy. Um, One of the things we deal with a lot in natural farming, not deal with, but affects kind of everything we're doing, are the heats of the world. So there's three heats. There's a celestial, and then terrestrial, and then passion heat or love heat,
Mm.
which comes in composting, as there's multiplication and consumption, that heat that is generated in the honeymoon suite, that heat of passion and consumptive energy. So it can become recognizing that that is one of the heats that exist, or in the world, can kind of help us use that for any number of things. Um, People heat livestock houses with living floors now, used in natural farming. So by creating a floor that has an ambient heat from microbes, you
Wow.
now can shut up the walls and close the vent in the winter and not pay for heating, and keep your animals happy. And not only happy, but in an ideal temperature, so that they're actually producing good weight. And so, yeah, really neat. And there's other uses for that, or ways that that becomes interactive for a farmer. Um,
So that was
we've got
terrestrial, passion, and what was the first one?
celestial, so sun and earth.
Celestial. Okay.
Yeah, so sun and earth, and then and the earth, is really interesting. 4 feet down, just about anywhere there's not permafrost, is maintained at 50 degrees summer and winter. So, creating these wallapini, or the different style of sunken greenhouses, you can use sun, earth, and microbe heat to grow in the winter. Um, so it can be a real cool. I have one of my students, Henry Kim. He's also a student of Master Cho, but he created an aquaponic system in the high desert just outside of LA to produce veggies for LA. And in the winter, he heats his aquaponics houses by making IMO4. So he makes IMO4 in the walkway, and that is enough heat generated for his closed greenhouse that he's staying in a healthy temperature for his plants without additional heat.
That's awesome. And what exactly is IMO? Can you just give us a quick rundown for the listeners?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess this is kind of back to what you need is what's around you. So one of the things, kind of key or central ideas in natural farming, is that we're using indigenous microbes. So the microbes are the central part. IMO is your main microbe inoculum kind of material. And so the IMO4, that four number, is just the fourth stage in a series of steps. So there's one, two, three, four, and those are just parts of the recipe, like mix the dry ingredients, now mix the wet ingredients if you're making a cake, those kind of things. That's the stage of IMO4. And what it is we're going into the forest, we're identifying highly fertile or microbially rich, diverse environments, untouched, as long as possible. So, in my studies, and I got to have some collaborative conversations with some microbial research nerds connected with the University of Hawaii while I was there, and
I bet they were all
basically,
about this.
there's people that love it for sure. There's people that don't understand it because it's not isolating a microbe. But in one of those conversations, we went really deep into where diversity is found. This guy actually studies, goes to these places, recognizing what's been done historically in these places, and then analyzing the microbial diversity from, this was an ag, this was never an ag. And one of these places was right up on my property. He was there with an extension agent, and they were doing some field trials. They were a ways into it. And what he found was, yeah, 30 feet up above this fence line where it had never been in commercial ag, there was thousands of unique species. And 30 feet down where it had been in sugarcane, there was hundreds
Wow.
on
So
or
big
less.
gap.
Huge gap. And we're talking about, like, distance wise, where these two samples are taken, maybe 100 feet away from each other.
Wow.
And so one of the keys is that IMO is not some, plug and play, just get the recipe and plug the things in, and whether you figure it out or not, it all works. IMO is something where the more microbial diversity you can cultivate in the process, and there's kind of instructions on how to do that, the better you'll do, the better your farm will do. And the nice thing is you can build diversity over time. But because we're using indigenous, when we establish it in our farmland, it self-perpetuates,
Mm.
and it likes this rainfall, this soil, this barometric pressure. And so we can take an indigenous culture, highly diverse now. We've focused on fungal production as we've grown this out, and we establish it or spread it in our farmland. And now next year it's there still.
Wow.
We're still benefiting. It's grown, it's spread out, it's continued to condition the soil. Whereas if we buy bugs in a jug, which are popular right now, typically those have about a 6 month fall off. They're not creating big communities of microbes. And so nature functions in community and in diversity.
Well, it's kind of like the probiotic pills, they people benefit from them, they're great, but from what I've been researching, it's hard for those microbes to really establish in your body over the long period. You might get that benefit from taking them, but are they really going to establish a good colony in your gut and whatnot? Probably not, just based on what I've been reading.
So I took that principle that you're talking about, also what I know about microbes. When I travel internationally, I have a protocol. If I'm going to be in Burma for 2 weeks, or I'm in Cambodia or Mexico or whatever, first thing I want to do is find a local ferment. So a yogurt or a kimchi, something that they have made there, fresh or real, not some big company like Yoplait that shipped it over from the US,
Right.
but like real food. And I eat that as soon as I can on arriving, because those lactobacilli family microbes are actually the ones that protect the locals from the bacteria in their water and the different things. These are the ones
Smart.
that find homeostasis in the environment. So I don't get, weird gut things when I travel. You know where I get weird gut things? I
You're in
get
the
weird gut
US.
things when I travel in the US. Like if I go on a road trip and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna stop, and I'm like eating stuff out of the gas station, that's when my gut's jacked.
Yep.
But traveling internationally, I don't typically get like a Montezuma's revenge or anything, because I'm seeking out those local ferments first. So yeah, it's that's better than stuff in a bottle, but stuff in a bottle can really help people. It is temporary, sure, but it's still the same natural law or principle that we need to get our nutrition out of food is diverse gut microbes.
Right. And similar thing is happening in the soil. So it sounds like IMO is one of the tools you use in Korean natural farming. And from what I've learned about it, and from some of the things you said, there's a lot more right to the locality than what we see. Like most of what's around you is microbes, so it makes sense to really focus on those. Also in the farming, and that's something that conventional farming, right, is kind of just totally overlooked and hasn't even been. It doesn't focus on it all. So, in what ways, does I guess conventional farming maybe fall short in that compared to Korean natural farming, and how does conventional farming like even deplete the soil and the biology? How is it really damaging it?
Those are big loaded questions,
Yeah.
Poldy, but I will try and tackle them for sure. The conventional ag has a different philosophy. And we could go back on how we got here, and yeah, there's big thoughts and big philosophical ideals that shift where scientists look for the answers, right?
Hmm.
So, one of the philosophical thoughts on nature is that it's all just a evolutionary process where we had a primordial goo that had a certain mix of chemicals that was able to spawn life, right? A mix of biochemicals, and now life comes out of that kind of almost chemistry birthed or was the creator of life, and then there was stages after that of from single-celled organisms to multi-celled organisms. This is a philosophical view of this world we exist in. If it is a chemistry kit, then all we need is the right chemistry to make plants grow and be healthy and humans grow. So we need the pharmaceutical industry, we need the big ag, big industries. That started from this idea that we're just a random compilation of chemicals, and so is soil. So intentional chemical input fixes everything. You see how the philosophy gets you there.
Right. That's like the whole
It's
philosophy of the agricultural revolution, right? Like the recent one, not the one 10,000 years ago. Yeah.
so yeah, I think nature's designed. I think nature's a beautiful machine beyond the comprehension of man. The deeper I go into the microbes as I study through the microscope, and I've done that now for 12 plus years, I see a symphony. I see interconnectivity that is so complex and so dialed and so perfect that there's like an orchestra person. Somebody wrote this. That's over and over what I get encountered with. And there's a whole kind of non-religious scientific movement called ID, intelligent design,
Mm.
and they have no religious affiliation. Michael Behe, who's one of their lead scientists, has no interest or knowledge of God or designer or Mother Earth or any of it. He no presupposition of what is, but they have through science alone and experimentation and looking at what exists said, bottom line, whatever you believe, this is here by design. We can't get away from that. Evolution, long ago, generations ago, was disproven by the flagellum motor and all these irreducibly complex parts. Sorry to get into this, but this is kind of how we get to this
Right,
problem.
right.
Now, if we believe that nature is intelligently designed, now we say, oh, where's the owner's manual? where's the things we need to do to work with this machine so we don't jack up the gears,
Right.
and now we're Korean natural farming is partnering with nature to grow food instead of getting our energy from inexpensive or as inexpensive as we can get. Those gotten really expensive kind of um, oil based fertilizer, and as much as we can get, as big payload as we can get from the fertilizer, instead of getting our profit margin from the amount of yield we can get beyond what our fertilizer cost. We're saying we're going to turn what's nature already doing that is generative, gives us production and yield, and how can we foster and make it work better? How can we get some high octane fuel into that engine so it runs primo? And that's now what we're doing. Instead of trying to just hack it and put everything the plant needs, we're saying, okay, that really healthy fruit tree in the wild that has the tastiest fruit, like, how do we get there?
Right.
And
What is doing it in nature? Yeah.
and how do we partner with it and foster it? So one of the key things is to have living soil. Farmland, the difference between conventional and what we're talking about here is life. A thriving ecosystem in the soil is the nutrient cycling potential, the straight nitrogen you can get just from there being this amount of life is massive. And then your rainfall has greater effect, and then your dew in the morning has effect, and then all of it becomes um, this as the ecosystem comes alive. We can start with a sterile, very dead soil, and in a year have a living ecosystem. We can start in an indoor flower bed, made out of wood and filled with the materials we put into it, but then we can make it alive, and still have more of a natural functioning soil and ecosystem in an indoor soil bed by bringing the indigenous life in than we have in a conventional system that's in outside and dirt, because if there's life, we're getting relationships in the root zone. So plants get on-demand minor minerals, and as plants get that on-demand minor minerals, they're getting all this nutrient from the rock and the sand and everything that's there. That goes into the plant and becomes those complex biochemicals that are human nutrition.
Right.
Whereas when we grow it in a conventional system, we're getting the shape, the color, the weight. But when we look at what was formed in the food itself, it didn't form any of the complex biochemicals we associate with nutrition and we need for brain health, um, and so that's why poverty in the U.S. looks like obesity,
Right.
because our food is cheap, but cheap food in the US is highly processed and void of nutrition. So
Exactly.
you eat it and you're still hungry. And so you now need to eat more. So now you're an eating machine and never getting enough nutrition. You still have all these problems. Now you have high amounts of sugar because we have a sugar rich, grocery store, and none of the nutrition. So now you get diabetes and all the things. It's simply our agriculture, you know.
A lot of it has to do with that. And what I always wonder though is like we're still give like conventional ag still gives the plants these nutrients, right? But why why do the plants turn out less nutritious? I mean, there's actual science on this. I looked at a study 2 weeks ago or so that took all a bunch of USDA data of like top crops, veggies that people are buying over the last like 50 years or so, I think it was. And there's a steep decline in nutrition in those common veggies. So something is leading to that. And I still can't fully wrap my head around like why that's happening, even though they're still giving the nutrition. Maybe not. Maybe it's because they're not getting it in a relationship with the microbes. Because
Sure. Well, I can explain that. Yeah,
yeah,
it the nutrition you're giving. So, like for example, we were conventional ag farm. We farm macadamia nuts in Hawaii, 750 acres. And before we got into natural farming, we're conventional. And so our inputs, what we put on to get maximum yield, is a 30-30-30 fertilizer, right? Comes over in a container, 30 nitrogen, 30 potassium, and 30 phosphorus,
right.
right? NPK. Those are three nutrients.
Yeah, just
Three.
three. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we are
So,
feeding them, but just yeah, not all the not a
yeah,
diverse amount of nutrients. Yeah,
yeah, let's give you sugar, carbs, and calcium. You become imbalanced, you get sick because you're missing things. Trees now, or plants are disease prone, bug prone. Now we need more pesticides. So now we got toxic plants. Now we need more germicides because we got to prevent the germs. Because when a plant has those, they'll get big and green, and you know what's inside of them is just sugar. So the bugs are like, ooh, a Capri Sun, stick my straw in,
yeah,
take it down,
I like that
But
analogy.
a plant that is producing complete proteins in the cell wall has like a 6-layer Capri Sun thing. Try and stick a plastic straw into that. You're gonna have to work at it. By the time you get done working at it, you've spent more energy than the calories you're going to get out of the Capri Sun. That's how it works for bugs. They no longer have ready food. But yeah, plants produce shape and structure and color and size from NPK, but they can't. Okay, I'll give you a good example. You know this, but we'll talk through it kind of by way of answering the question. You've had that strawberry from Costco,
Hmm.
big, beautiful, and red, totally flavorless.
Yeah,
Okay, why? Why does grandmother's strawberry, which is this big, taste so much better than the Costco strawberry, which is this big?
yeah,
NPK, nature's nutrients.
yeah. Okay.
And guess what? When we taste, got nature made, just something with no ingredients, we just taste something that came out of nature and it's super flavorful. It has been found, science has found that is an association with nutrients. We can
Really?
actually taste what's good for us.
And
So
that,
when you go to a plant or a fruit or a veggie and you smell it and it smells good, like an apple or like a peach, that's probably good for you. Whereas if you smell it and there's no smell and you taste it and it's kind of flavorless, that's probably pretty void of nutrients. It's got some sugars in there, but it's not got a whole lot else.
yeah, no micronutrients and
That's it. It's
cofactors and all the dark nutritional matter that we don't even know about yet.
Yeah, so that strawberry was able to get through microbial connections in its root zone on-demand minor minerals that it was able to use to produce these complex sugars we associate with flavor, complex biochemicals we associate with flavor and smell and all these things. Just like you, when you have malnutrition, your fingernails are brittle, your hair is kind of dry and funky, but when you're getting good nutrition, your hair's shiny. We know these things. We see them in humanity, or you look sickly or whatever. Plants are the same. Plants benefit from nutrition just like we do, and we benefit from them being nutrient rich. But yeah, they're giving them limited. It's whatever that farmer in the office on his computer decided was as much as he could spend to get something. It's an input output business equation. We're not thinking nutrition. We're not thinking. I mean, farmers care about plant health because a healthy plant produces good food or good yield. But we're not farmers aren't getting paid for nutrition, and the customer isn't aware of these things we're talking about. So there's no margin for nutrient dense food. That's got to change. That's changing. We're getting more aware of it. But
We are. Well, that's a great explanation. Thanks for doing that, because that's no one's really been able to lay it out like that on here before. Um, and it is true with the whole example of flavorless versus flavor. I mean, I forage a lot of wild strawberries. One of the most flavorful things you'll ever taste. They're tiny. They're
yeah,
like smaller than my fingernail, but
yeah.
they're just a flavor explosion.
You
Um,
probably are getting twice as much nutrition in that as the Costco one,
right. Yeah, and you can eat
and
a
you
lot
don't need.
more of those.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
you're not getting weird imbalances of sugar and
Yeah. And then conventionally the soil dies just because of herbicides, pesticides,
E-
germicides,
no,
tilling.
even if they're using none of those, just conventional fertilizer, that salt buildup will create an imbalance in the soil that is not hospitable to
Mm,
microbes. Now a conventional field with salt buildup, if you go to farm it regeneratively and you put microbes on and you're not adding a bunch more salt, they'll mine that and make it plant available. You'll get a bumper crop. If somebody's a conventional farmer and they want to try a bit of natural farming and they get microbes on their crop with their conventional fertilizer, microbes will mine and make that more available. They'll get more yield, and that's how this all started. Everybody had living soil. The fertilizer salesman came along and was like, "Hey, I got this, you know, nitrogen. What is it? We were making."
NPK.
Well, before it was NPK because they added the other things. Nitrogen sulfate. It was bomb making material from World War I, and so they put that on, and it was like they had these jump bumper crops, right? Because they had living soil, so all the microbes to process all that chemical nitrogen, and they just piped it right to the plants, and they got some minor nutrients. But as they apply that, the diversity, especially the fungi, dies off. That salt, that imbalance, that changing soil chemistry messes with everything, and you have die off. So now, 2-3 years applying it, we have the dust bowl. Everything's
Yep.
died, nothing's holding the soil together, and the topsoil blows away because it's all just chemistry now. It's salts, right? And
Right.
yeah, so big problems and really easy solutions. We
Yeah,
just we
it
just need
seems
to make the soil alive again.
right, and that focus on the microbes seems to be like one of the main things with Korean natural farming. And you mentioned your almost 800-acre macadamia nut farm that kind of got you into farming. So I think this might be a good kind of segue into your story a bit. Um, you farmed conventionally at the beginning, probably had that lifeless soil, and then you got introduced to Korean natural farming. And then what happened from there? Like,
Yeah,
what
we were a
what was
split
that journey
operation.
like?
Yeah, we were conventional on half, and we were organic on half. And conventional made a lot more money for us than organic. We did all the things for organic. We had a whole composting program. We had a compost tea program. We were buying vermicompost and applying it, and we did all these things. And our trees were yellow and underproductive in our organic, and just not happy. And then in our conventional, we're able to get inexpensive fertilizer. We're able to spray herbicide, which saved us from having to mow all the time. And yeah, so we had both operations. Organic was worse than conventional for us. We lost money on organic, and we didn't have an organic premium from our product because it just wasn't much going in our industry. We couldn't get it processed organically, but it wasn't working with all those inputs. And then we let it go fallow for 3 years because we had a crop failure, and we almost lost the farm. And we were just farming conventional for a little bit,
So you just kind of
And
let the trees do their thing, basically, during that
and
time.
then yep, and in 3 years with no inputs and no humans, everything turned green and was productive. And so this for us was a really important moment. So my dad's like, "What's happening here?" And in his kind of, kudos to him, I'm managing with him. I'm younger, I was 27 or something when I was 26 when I was started managing with him, and he's like, "Hey, will you figure this out? Like what's happening here, why this became fertile when we left it alone. We need a better way to farm more profitably." And he didn't love using herbicide anymore. And we had a 400% increase in 1 year on our fertilizer costs, and because oil went up. And so
Whoa.
we just saw this part of what we did as a pinch point, a place where we could get killed. And I began studying. I built a commercial aquaponics system and was learning about the microbes in that and selling lettuce. And then we started. I started researching, and we went to a class on Korean natural farming. And 2011, I started a 14 tree trial, and it went really well.
With
I
Korean
left it
natural
for
farming. So you flew to Korea, right? And met Master Cho and learned from him in that way?
so the first time I really studied natural farming was in 2011. Master Cho taught his only 5-day class in the US, in my small town. So it was
Wow.
really a gift. Yeah, it was a lot of miraculous grace that I'm asking this question. I need to figure out how we do this. And Master Cho's first US class is in my small town. And his daughter taught it with him, and I got a lot of practical things from that. And then I went on and just experimented um, like crazy and implemented. And I did a 14 tree trial, and we really tracked it and watched it. I had some diseased trees recover, and I had healthy trees get healthier, and unhealthy trees really turn the corner. And that wasn't happening in anything else we did. And no matter what we were putting on, we weren't getting recovery of diseased trees.
So were you
Um,
skeptical at this point? Like still super
Very,
skeptical about? Yeah.
very. Yeah, I sat through Master Cho's class. I took perfect notes, but I also was just scratching my head like, I don't know. Like, we're talking about wheelbarrow scale. If I'm doing this by wheelbarrows, I'm going to need like 30 years to get around it on time. Like, nobody's ever done it on a large scale. So I had no one to learn from that way. And yeah, it was a lot of challenge, but a lot of gift too, that I had Master Cho in my town. I got to start that way. And then, yeah, I went 11 times to Korea to study, and made relationships with Konkuk University there, which I now advise their doctor program. Wonderful people, really good work being done there. And yeah, I did 44-acre trial for about 4 years. And we looked around, we looked at our numbers, our yield numbers, the cost to fertilize, all the things we had done. And we said, we're converting our whole farm to this. And
To
so
Korean
we did
natural
that.
farming. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we converted to organic. We were 100%, we've been 100% organic um, now on our farm for about 8 years. And we have our own products, and it's making more sense, dollars and cents, the farm is, with these changes. But what I've found, I had a big experiment wondering, okay, it's trees. We're not tilling the soil. If we apply it and it gets established, how long can we farm it or harvest from it commercially while only composting or giving very minor inputs? Can we basically apply this for 3 years, 4 years, and then never apply it again and get the same benefit 10 years later? That
And
was
by
that was kind of
by apply, I mean like the IMOs, these indigenous microorganisms, and other techniques within Korean natural farming.
specifically IMO. Yeah,
Okay.
IMO, in my opinion, is 80% of the benefit of natural farming. So this is The nutrition, sure, but I mean, a lot of nutrition techniques like composting and, um, chop and drop, cover cropping. There's a lot of ways you can kind of add to nutrition if you have living soil. So there is a nutrition suite in natural farming, but I tell people that if you have good, regenerative techniques or Johnson Su bioreactor or different things, these can all be soil foods. But once you establish the microbes, now all you need to do as a farmer, or really the protocol, feed the soil.
Hmm.
Get all the microbes alive. Now you've turned the Ferrari engine on. Now you need to make sure there's fuel. So
Right.
keep feeding the soil, and if you do that, you're off to the races. Like this works. This is really effective, and it's effective all over the world because anywhere we're doing this, we're using indigenous microbes.
Yeah, using what the environment gives it. And what did you find in you had this theory of we only need to apply it like once or so and it'll establish and then we're good. How is that what happened?
No,
No.
mm-mm, no. We're conventionally farming 750 acres. We're driving equipment on it. We're taking off 100% of the crop. And even sometimes when we prune, we are taking that material away and putting it on a small amount of acreage, or we're putting it into our compost. And not all the orchard is getting that all the time. I think just the degradation or the slow kind of impact of natural farming kind of reduces. Also, my brother did some applications of minor nutrients. Just like he's kind of a copper was applied on one area as a minor nutrient, but copper's antifungal, and we had weird reaction with some of that,
Mm,
or we had kind of so. I think I think that it's important to continue to kind of maintain some microbial life. Um, if you're conventionally farming, maybe once a year or once every few years as a re up, because in our farm, it seems to have been impacted by just farming it, intensively. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the threshold is on that, how little you can do and still get kind of maximum yield and efficacy. But I believe that I've seen on our farm that I can't just do nothing. I mean, we're composting and we're doing some things, but because the trees are being conventionally or commercially farmed, kind of intensively farmed, they're going to need re-up. And then I would say even more so if you are pulling something out of the ground every year or turning it over or doing anything like that. You're going to re-establish every time you yank it out of the ground or turn it over,
right. But then you just
re-establish your
apply more
microbes.
IMO and
Yeah,
you're good to go for a while.
totally. And it does build up. I mean, when I go in my orchard and I kick over leaves, the whole orchard has mycelium now. It never did before. And my earthworms are still way more than they were before, but I'm not feeding my soil enough. So I think maybe my theory, had we been able to produce more yards of compost and got more out continuously, I think we could have kept that population up and really gotten a lot of cycling and production and healthy trees. But I think the lack of food is probably what got to us. So if you're farming commercially, I think there is a need to continue to feed your soil, and we just need to be better at that.
Right. So you're saying basically though that if you can do this conventionally and continue to do it conventionally, but also add in IMOs and benefit from it.
I'm interchanging two words: commercially, so
Okay. Okay.
large scale, full tilt commercially. So commercially is kind of just bigger farm,
Right.
for
Right. Right.
profit, bigger farm, not like a hobby farm. That's the differentiator I made. So commercial and conventional being two different things.
Yeah.
Conventional is pesticides, herbicides, and conventional fertilizer. Commercial can be regenerative, but you're at scale. You're
Right.
you're farming for profit.
Right. And that's the big question, right? Like on your website, I know you have a your vision mission one of the things I read on there was we want to see one of the most central human needs met worldwide. We see that an effective agriculture system is possible and can result in affordable, nutrient dense food accessible everywhere, with farmers owning their own land and making a living wages sustainably. And I think that's an amazing like goal. But like when I talk to a lot of farmers that do things conventionally, they say they just can't get away from that because it's you can't scale it. But you're really proving that at least Korean natural farming methods can be done at scale, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
can you
Sorry, go ahead.
speak a bit more on that? Just like what you've done around scaling Korean natural farming?
Sure. Yeah, I've been able to work with farms all over the world and scaled farms. Uh, there's I think it's a 200 cow dairy in Ireland that I work with, and this year is the best year he's ever had.
Wow,
He's been doing Korean natural farming now for um, 3 years, and financially, the best year he's ever had in his life and his experience with his dad, running the
that's
farm.
amazing.
So
So they have been doing this
yeah,
farm for a while,
yeah, he came and learned from me at a class, and he went back and he just did it. And now we teach classes at his farm, and people are following him through the door because there's all these dairies about that size that can do the exact same thing he's doing.
right?
And yeah, and so he's producing nutrient dense grass, and his cows are producing more milk and better quality milk. He's able to keep more for silage and have no feed costs in addition. And yeah, his land became more productive, and so he's more profitable. His cows don't get sick, so he spends less on the vet. It's a whole systemic shift, and I was in Iowa. I have a friend and a client, Kyle Schnell. He is sixth generation farmer on that land. He farms 1,000 acres, corn, rye, soy, and alfalfa. And he is farming using Korean natural farming and Johnson Su bioreactor and cover cropping and crimping. And he's got the only green hills in his whole county.
Wow,
Uh, yeah, and when they aren't planting or harvesting, they're all brown and bare, and his hills are all cover cropped and green and lush. And yeah, he's figuring it out. He works hard, and he doesn't. I don't have all the answers for him because I'm not a row cropper, and so he's coming up with great answers and figuring it out.
that's so neat. You
Um,
guys are like spearheading this revolution. You know, everyone's kind of. I mean, it's stuff that
I
that
I think
takes
we should
years,
call it a
right?
renaissance. I think we should
Renaissance,
call it a
yeah,
renaissance. We're going back to a way we farmed before, just with a little more understanding now of why it worked.
right. Yeah, totally. And together with scientists and whatnot. So when scaling it, you kind of alluded a bit to the costs already, but like how do the costs compare to conventional farming? Because that's the issue that the farmers have, right? It's like, well, is this sustainable for me in terms of can I make money with it? Like I'd love to do sustainable agriculture, but I need to also feed a family, right? And whatnot.
Yeah, and I think that is really kind of the crux of it. That is really important question and consideration. A farmer has to be able to ask that question and have an answer that makes sense, because we can't we can't choose a more natural or better for the environment or better for humanity way of farming that we can't sustain. If we're going to go out of business or we're going to run out of money trying to farm better, then it isn't something a farmer can do because they're committing their farm to end, which is not sustaining, is not sustainable. If they run out of money or they have to work another job to pay their bills on their farm. So this is part of the definition of sustainable is that a farmer can sustain their family on their farm. Um, the minimum I think I needed to apply liquid IMO, which is an input I developed for scaling natural farming. It's very inexpensive. Was 3 times a year. If I apply liquid IMO to my whole orchard 3 times a year, I feel like that's bare minimum to maintain my microbes and keep feeding my trees. Um, that cost me $27 per acre per year to apply 3 times. So that's for all the labor to produce all my inputs, all the labor to apply anything to make it, any of that, and all the hard costs of sugar or anything I was buying for composting, um, my tractor hours, and my fuel for tractors. So for $27 per acre per year, I was getting 3 applications of liquid IMO and the labor and the all the costs associated.
That seems low. How does that compare to like having to buy pesticides and fertilizer and all that?
It's very low, but that isn't the whole story. I now, compared to my conventional farm, um, now instead of being able to herbicide a 10-foot strip, that now I don't need to mow for 3 4 months, which is a huge cost saving.
And time
I
saving, right?
I now need to mow that same strip, and I'm going to need to mow it once a month for 4 months. I'm going to have a person doing that, so that's a higher cost. So basically, what I say after figuring out the costs in a few places is the a very conservative estimation of the comparison is that using Korean natural farming, getting being organic, getting an organic price. Um, using natural farming, I can farm and get equal yield to conventional um, at equal cost. So I can farm and get the same amount for the same cost as I was doing conventionally, with all my extra benefits with herbicide and all of that, balanced with my mowing, that it was about break even comparatively in cost. But now I'm getting the same yield, but I'm getting a premium because I'm organic. So now it
Right.
is better. Yeah.
And
So
you probably have a product that people, come back for. 'Cause
we have a
nowadays,
story. We have something I can be proud of. I also don't have to tell an employee to go spray herbicide with a hazmat suit on
yeah, right.
because we stopped being able to feel good about that.
Plus,
And
you can probably, where you said you were able to hire more people, right?
well, yeah. So instead of paying that herbicide company or that fertilizer company, now we have one more job. We needed another mower to mow. So we still spent that money that we spent conventionally, but we're spending it on somebody's livelihood and part of the team. So it was a positive move. So yeah, I think farmers really can do it. The thing is that there's a little learning curve, and that's prohibitive. So this is not talk to an extension agent, buy this, this, and this, and IMO, and put it on, and you're off. Like this is somebody's going to need to produce IMO for you, or you're going to learn to do this. And yeah, so I think that there will be more of this available, more things available going forward as this grows and understanding popularity and exposure. So get the word out. The
Yeah,
best food comes from the best soil.
that's right. And it's powerful, man, really powerful. And it seems like it's something that people can apply at home. Like they can, it's practical.
So
It
easy
can, yeah.
and
Like
so
what are,
fun. Kids like it.
right. So so you can make your own IMO at home. What other tools are there that like people listening that are home gardeners or small scale farmers could use and look up and research a
Um,
bit more?
the easiest entry would be a JMS, genome microbial solution. can be made in 48 hours. I have a video on it. If you search Chris Trump on YouTube or check out my website, biomei.solutions, BIOMEI dot solutions. JMS is super simple, super cheap, and you can condition some microbes into your soil right away. And then, yeah, the goal, I think, if people want to get into this, is to start playing with IMO and learning it. In 1 year, if you keep trying, you will be able to produce IMO effectively and to great value. But there is a little learning, or come to a class and get a jump start. But really, a lot of people I work with remotely, a ton of people in Africa that have never had a class. All they've got is the free resources on the videos, and they're crushing it. So
That's awesome.
it is just kind of a conscientious care for what you're doing. Make sure you're making it right, and be honest with yourself. If it sucks, don't think you're going to get great results.
Right. Man, you're opening a whole can of worms here for everyone, I feel like, especially, if you're a forager listening right now and you're also a home gardener. Now you can add another thing to your foraging list. You can go forage for microbes out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And make your own IMO with it. I love it. That's so sweet. So, Chris, I don't want to, we're getting closer to the end time. I guess one question I still was curious about is like, are there any policy hurdles or maybe, things that are happening law wise, policy wise that are either going to help Korean national farming get established, or are there any that are like hindering it from getting established more on a large scale?
Yeah, right now we're not dealing with a lot of that as far as policy getting in the way. But I think one of the things that's important to note, if you are going to do this and you do want organic certification, don't use Korean natural farming terms. Don't try and teach your certifier, what IMO is. Use established terms. They have rules for all of this stuff, fall within their category so they can say, oh, that's what this is. So IMO is plant-based compost. You don't need to check its temperature for, the regulatory things. And then FBJ is, yeah, um, kind of liquid compost, just plant based.
And what does that stand for again? FPJ?
Fermented plant juice. It's
Okay.
just we're basically making kind of a ready plant food, high quality ready plant food. Yeah, really, liquid IMO is just actively aerated compost tea. So falling within the terms they already have, because that's what it is. We have plant-based compost, we have actively aerated compost tea. We're just doing it a slightly different way. Doesn't mess with any of the regulations. So I
Yep.
would just encourage staying within the established law because it all works for you.
Right. That's a really good tip, I feel like, for people listening right now.
Yeah.
So, Chris, as a wrap up, what will be your like key message to the listeners who are keen on transitioning to maybe, more sustainable, regenerative gardening and farming practices?
Well, first off, I am looking for a national and international network of people to work on taking over and changing the world. Not personally taking it over, but that people farming with this regenerative style are taking over the world and changing how we do things. And yeah, come learn it and get involved. There's now we're looking for people to partner with all over the place to kind of get this word out. So if you're not natural farming, get your natural farming on, become an expert, and join the community. And if you want to help make this spread, reach out, say hi, and say, "Hey, I'm an app developer, and whatever. I don't know, but really play with it." And my biggest encouragement is find a friend to do it with. Natural farming is a whole lot more fun with a friend and bounce back and forth and get all excited. Also, if you're going to do it in your kitchen, clean up real well after yourself, or your significant other will put the kibosh on natural farming.
Yeah, no more of that.
Uh,
I bet
so,
it produces some interesting smells.
Yeah, I mean, failures can be, um, yeah, you know, if you produce some putrefaction in a bucket, um, that can be like involuntary gag level.
Cool, man. So, where can people find out more about you? How can they work with you? How can they follow you in your journey and become part of this community?
Yeah, I work with farms all over. I'll do kind of short-term installations a lot of times to get people started. So if they're a large-scale farm and need just kind of a jump start, I'll show up for 2 weeks and build them a lab and make all the stuff with them so they learn how to do it in their space. But I am found on Instagram at Soil Steward. I'm found on my website is biome.solutions, and yeah, and a lot of the content on that website, I have a tab on my website that's all free resources. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there. Again, a lot of this knowledge is just, we decided to make it open source. So it's
Sweet.
just there for the use, and you can teach it, you can share it with your neighbor. Nobody's going to stop you. There's no police board that wants to regulate how you share natural farming. The idea is that it spreads and it's empowering. So be empowered. The knowledge is available to you, and it's as simple as learning how to make a cake.
Is Master Cho still alive?
Master Cho is still alive. He is taken care of by his son, Cho Han Yu, or Cho Young Sun, who is Jadam, which is a iteration of natural farming. But Master Cho, last I heard, is just, yeah, health's not great, so he's not teaching. Um,
But he's got to be proud of his
yeah, yeah,
mentees like you who are out there really spreading his
he is.
his
He's
ideas. And
expressed that. Yeah, yeah.
that's awesome.
He's an emotional man. I've watched him cry many times from different things, from the pain of the split nation in North Korea to the beauty of agriculture spreading and getting established. So
Well,
yeah, he's
I'm
proud.
glad. I'm glad his legacy is moving throughout the world. That's
I am
awesome.
too.
Cool, Chris.
Thanks for sharing it too. Thanks for getting the word out.
Hundred
That's a big
percent.
deal.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that's one of the big reasons I started this podcast. You know, just share stories like yours and Master Cho's and see what's working. Because, yeah, the things we're doing right now don't seem to be working. So, yeah, there's solutions, and people are working actively on it. Actively on it. So, super exciting stuff. Super.
Super
I'm
cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep
Let's
just
talk again
following
about
you.
it. I'll come back on and we can get more into the nutrition and how we're taking some of these fermenting techniques and making them into food. I know Antonin's
That would
gotten
be
a lot
great.
into that. Yeah.
That would be great. Let's do it. Sweet.
All right.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.